Somehow, somewhere, gliding parted company with its own image. The sport developed into a high-tech miracle, but the sport's image stayed rooted in the 1960s. Now these machines are so fast and fly such great distances that over the past 40 years they've slipped quietly out of public view. And if anything, anywhere, deserves the title of the world's most amazing untold story, this is it. Incredible machines, incredible people, incredible journeys. And to tell this story, the world's top pilots, a new type of race, New Zealand's unforgiving mountains. To visualize the world's ultimate glider race will involve some technical adventures no less dramatic than the race itself.
Pilots, cameras and animators gathered in Queenstown today to show off new technology that will revolutionise the sport of gliding.
A pristine winter's day and the sort of images that it's hoped will do for gliding what technology's already done for sports like yachting and golf. The pictures are from a state-of-the-art gyro-stabilised camera. The graphics just the latest innovation from the groundbreaking animation research. The January's Grand Prix, featuring 10 of the world's best pilots, is the priority. Gliding will be seen like it's never been seen before.
Organisers say providing live TV pictures of the New Zealand Gliding Grand Prix in January will be a huge technical challenge.
Animation Research is an amazing small company. They changed yachting forever with their groundbreaking work on the America's Cup, turning what had been an elite and scrutable sport into a mass media success story. Then they moved on to car racing and golf and cricket, arguably the world's most puzzling sport, at least to the uninitiated. But now the challenge is greater: how to track gliders through terrain where there are no radio or cell phone networks. How to track the gliders with virtually no time delay. How to show the complex strategies that the world's top pilots will use to beat each other.
In this event we've got the third dimension. It's all about altitude, who has the more altitude. It's not necessarily about distance to the finish anymore, so we've got to try and convey the information that we're getting back, which is positional, into some sort of sense that the viewer can get an idea of what's happening in the event, who's in a better position, not necessarily closest to the finish.
The answer lies in these thousands of lines of computer code and a series of powerful black boxes. Time is tight, and only weeks away from the start of the Grand Prix, success looks far from guaranteed.
Being in the middle of nowhere is the biggest problem, and so what we're doing at the moment is we're really focusing on trying to get a satellite-based solution working. That doesn't mean that just because we're now sending our signals up into space that the problems are resolved. Far from it. As soon as the gliders are tipping on their side, then they're now sending the signals out sideways, and so this is a significant problem to the performance of the network.
And to play host to this competition, a dusty town in the middle of nowhere, Omarama. This is where the best soaring in the world takes place, a place to inspire both excitement and fear. The world's top gliding nations have sent their best pilot, a pilot who could come to Omarama and not be intimidated by the mountains or the other pilots. Sebastian Karwa, the world's top-ranked glider pilot, became Poland's national yachting champion before flying gliders. He's a hospital doctor.
This terrain is so beautiful and these conditions are so strong that it's a pleasure to fly here.
Pete Harvey, an English architect, won the British hang gliding championships before learning to fly gliders. He holds the record for the longest distance in an international gliding race. He has his own brand of dry humour.
It's a bit like a knife fight in a telephone box. You know, you all get in there and you're tick, 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 tick like that and you go round and round.
David Mockler from the United States works in the defence industry and holds the Hatcher Trophy, the Top Gun award of American soaring.
We don't interact with the rocks like you do here in New Zealand.
Graham Parker, 4 times Australian national champion. He runs a private anaesthetic practice in Adelaide. It's Graham's job to beat the Kiwis.
Here, even small decisions you get wrong can cost you big time.
Olivier De Ros from France is a former world champion and works as an instructor at the French National Gliding Centre.
It's very difficult because I don't know this country.
Uli Schwenk has been German national champion and been a member of the German team since 1992. He owns clothing stores and is a national hero in a country with over 30,000 glider pilots.
And this is something special, I like it.
Giorgio Galleta is known in Italy as the mountain rat. He loves to stick tight to mountain ridges where the air is rough and powerful. Giorgio has been a world champion.
A glider sport is a very spectacular sport, but only for the pilot.
And for the first time, the women's world champion, Mette Pedersen, will fly against men. She's from Denmark and only 28 years old.
It's very clear to see who's used to flying here and who's not.
New Zealander John Coots is the world 15-metre champion. He's a property developer who lives in South Africa with his new wife and baby son. He's 30 years old.
Just go as fast as I can, that's the only tactic there is.
Ben Fluitt is 32 years old and works as a manager of computer data centres in Auckland, New Zealand. He's the only pilot here not to have won a national or world title in his own right.
This is, without a doubt, the most exciting flying I've ever been involved in.
And Terry Delore, a carpet dealer from Christchurch in New Zealand's South Island. Terry holds multiple world records and is Steve Fawcett's current gliding partner for world record attempts.
Well, anything beats coming last, you know.
The boss, Bob Henderson, president of the International Gliding Commission and a pioneer of the new Grand Prix race format.
It's a new event for gliding. We've been trialling the gliding product for 4 years and this year it's in full swing. What's particularly unique for Marama is it's the first time we've tried to bring together the technology to be able to show the gliding to spectators and to the media.
Peter Newport is a TV producer and glider pilot.
What they experience is almost beyond our imagination, and it seems to me just totally wasted that they have these experiences and none of us see it. So the thing that intrigues me is if we can not only tell their story but show it, it makes these guys overnight extrovert sports heroes.
Many days of practice are needed just to get used to the landscape, the turn points, the traps and the dead ends.
Everyone's earned their place here. Obviously Ben, myself and Terry have more experience in them, but especially the European pilots, they learn very quickly.
I'm here trying to learn all the nuances and the techniques and the technical routes through these mountains because it is a very, very special place.
Each day saw a different pilot win. The field was perfectly balanced as the public racing days approached. There was a feeling here that something special was about to happen. To date, it has been a sport with a beginning and an end, but with the middle part missing. And it's that middle bit, the flying at high speeds with no engine, less than a wingspan from the ground, which represents the essence of flight and an intriguing aspect of the human spirit. Mette Pedersen gets off to a rough start, landing 8 kilometers short of the runway.
I thought that I was about to make it home, and then nature kind of told me I was not about to make it home. I had a lot of sink for a short while, which put me out of options. I had to go directly towards an airstrip like this.
And then the next day, she manages to damage her glider, even before the public racing has begun.
It looks, damaged, but it is the rudder. It's not like the wings or a surface that will carry me. If Dave thinks it's okay, I trust him. And I think I'll just sit down for 5 minutes and get the mental pictures back in my head of a glider that flies perfectly normal.
It's the first time that we've had all the world's best pilots in one place, in one class.
Well, we've had 4 winners in 4 days, so you're not going to be able to tell from day to day whose number's going to come up.
If I flew it the most aggressive I could, I still wouldn't be matching these guys.
2 days ago, I stalked Ben Fluitt, and he didn't know I was behind him. So for the last 60 kilometres, I'm stalking him, and I got right behind him, so I'm 50 metres behind him. He doesn't know I'm there. And we get the last turn point, and we've got 6 kilometres to come to the field. So the only way I can get him is at the last moment to pounce and take him. And we went around the last turn point, and he went just 100 metres too wide. So I thought, that's it. And I dived in, put it on the deck, and just went as fast as I possibly could for the line, and he was behind. And I thought, I got him. And as we got closer and closer and closer, I could see him getting in there. I was getting there, and he got me by probably 10 metres over the line. Yeah, the score was 1 second. It was less than a second. But that was real, absolute racing, as close as we could possibly get.
You lead them all on down a blind alley to 500 feet in the middle of nowhere. I'll cruise.
So you reckon I should?
Don't reckon there's a hope in hell of you doing that?
No, we could do.
ABC Australia's Special Projects Division have 30 cameras to squeeze into the glider cockpits.
The intention for us is to put 3 cameras in each glider. Again, we'll work with you guys to make sure that it's minimum impact so that you're not aware of all the gear in there.
And at the moment, the TV gear is so powerful that it is wiping out the computers which the pilots need to fly and navigate. Later in the day, 2 helicopters arrive. One carries a military-inspired camera which uses cruise missile technology to allow incredible stability in the roughest conditions. New Zealander Peter Thompson developed the system, and his company, Aeroptics, hopes the gliding Grand Prix will see his gear used as never before. The next challenge is to figure out how the choppers can keep up with the gliders. G. Dale is a world-class instructor.
560 knots, and they'll fly a circle which is a couple of 100 metres across, so quite a small circle.
He's going along to keep the choppers out of trouble and up with the race.
You might be doing, say, 100 along a ridge line, and you tuck in really close to get a look. If they find a good thermal, they'll just go whammer, and if you're there, you're in the danger area. But
Ben Fluitt has issues with the TV gear disrupting his essential flight and navigation systems.
It was working, and then it dropped the sats.
So these are the 3 antennas effectively, 1, 2, 3.
I'm one of the 2 gliders that's got the GPSs in the new configuration. Yeah. I'm having trouble with satellites dropping out.
If anything happens, you just switch it off.
Yeah. I agree with that, but my concern is that switching it off may not fix the problem.
Eventually, the grid is launched. Ben's problems continue, but the decision is made. The race is on. Ben turns his animation research gear off. He'll be invisible in terms of real-time graphics, but visible to the helicopter camera and onboard minicams.
Start in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go.
Okay, they're on their way. John Coots through the start first.
Each race is around 250 kilometres. Race tactics are deceptively simple. Gamble speed and height in order to cross the finish line first.
The top guys will be at 5,500, 6,000, wouldn't you say, Kirk?
Yeah, I think so. And Meta's 1,000 feet below the lowest of them.
There's a bonus point for the first glider around the initial turn point, TP2, and this puts extra pressure on.
The pilot who's closest to the turn point is not necessarily in the best position, because if he's somewhat lower than the pilot behind, the 2 even out.
We've got Karwa, De Ros, Coots, the first 3.
So these gliders can glide 43 kilometres horizontally. So, that in still air. So assuming they got no lift and no sink, from 3,300 feet high they can glide, in theory, 43 kilometres as long as there's no obstacles like hills in their way. And their goal is to try and obviously find climbs along the way so that they can glide further than that.
Fluitt and Coots, former teammates and boyhood friends, find themselves locked into a determined dash for turn point 2. Olivier De Ros joins the sprint, and things get serious.
That's more than the liftoff of the 737 at the local airport.
So we should see who's getting there first within the next couple of minutes.
Okay, that sounds pretty good. And
you can see Coots now. He's actually put the speed on to make sure he gets that bonus point. He
really going 300 kilometres an hour. He's going like crazy for the bonus point.
But John Coots' enthusiasm for the extra point leaves him low on energy and height.
Could be a bonus point to Coots, which could be very vital in the race when he's only 3 points behind. Coots, De Ros and Parker.
But Coots is still low. An early dash for the bonus point can have disastrous results.
Okay, we believe that this is showing us...
The field then splits. most heading north up the Hunter Range, just to the east of Lake Howea. The other smaller group decides to cut inland.
That's pretty unusual for the pack to split as much as that, and De Ros and Sebastian Karwa have come right onto the Howea Ridge. As this comes around, you'll see Lake Howea. So Sebastian's got 40 k's to one, Giorgio 43 k's, Terry 43 k's, Graham Parker 44 k's. They're in a strong position from an altitude point of view, low altitude route. If they just cough a bit, they're going to be in trouble. Appearing here, 3 peaks of Mount Cook and the South Ridge, first climbed by Sir Edmund Hillary in 1952. It's a very humbling sport, this gliding thing. You make all these decisions, huge decisions, and you get back and find somebody else has raced around quicker than you. And all will be revealed at the turn point up there. Kirk, we got a horse race here.
Yeah, I think looking from that, those guys on the Howea Ridge will probably past De Ros and Fluit going in there. I mean, look at the altitude Coots has got now. We haven't seen anyone that high all day.
This is pretty inhospitable country, ladies and gentlemen. There's no roads up this valley at all.
Suddenly, everyone's into serious alpine conditions. The rolling hill country giving way to the high, forbidding black peaks.
So Graham Parker's throwing in a turn here. He's going, I want to stay on top of the ridge. 10 or 15 kilometres from the Landsborough River. And if they go over there, there's nowhere to land. So that's the Hunter River underneath.
These are the world's best pilots. Winning is at the front of each competitor's consciousness, but no one is untouched by the sheer majesty and danger of their surroundings.
Parker's going for the turn. Okay, he went out at 6.5 roughly. He's heading out to the turn, which is out in the middle of the valley. We call it Scrubby. It's out in Scrubby Flat in the middle of the Hunter River. Great fishing place. It's magnificent. Here he is, going to whack himself into the beer can. Giorgio from Italy. They've got big mountains in Italy, and he is a master of this kind of alpine flying. And look how he's working the gullies there. Look how he is sucking every ounce of energy out of the side of the mountain. And look at his height, 6,800 and 6,900 feet. He's just working all these bumps because he knows he's got to be as high as he can when he gets out to the turn. That's Sebastian, the leader. Look for his shadow. You can see as a shadow occasionally underneath on the rocks. So he's running close to these giant cliffs. Forbes Flat, at the head of the Hunter River, but don't tell anybody about the fish
now we
up
see
there.
Sebastian crossing the pass there, and is that the pass? Oh, Graham.
Yep, Graham, do you think he crossed? He may have crossed.
It looked like he crossed. He looked like he got quite a bit of sinking behind the hill as well.
We'll get an angle. I think he may have been crossing to the upper Ahuriri. Look at the guy climbing at the top left there.
We've got 3 of them climbing there against the rocks. Hopefully we can see who that is, because there's a couple of D2s in there and we may be able to find out who Ben's flying with.
And Parker's got 10,000 feet there momentarily. There's some strong climbs there on the black rocks going like crazy. And just imagine, ladies and gentlemen, these guys have never been here before. They're seeing these mountains for the first time, just like you are.
So he looks to be crossing the saddle there, Gavin, do you think?
I think so. That's the Hopkins. Yep. Somebody's on the way across into the Huxley, I believe.
And somebody's already nearly there. It could be Giorgio.
Giorgio, that clever little Italian. He can fly in the mountains like nobody else.
See him diving over the saddle there in the sink, picking up speed in the sink, and look how much height they're losing there, just in the severe sink behind the mountain.
They're up in these wild remote valleys going down like a brick. And
Sebastian Karwa makes it to the Dobson turn point first, even though he has never flown in these mountains before the Grand Prix. Hot on his tail, Ben Fluit and Giorgio Galleta.
You'll probably find he's even slowed down there a bit, Gavin, to take a photo.
Yeah, he'll be taking pictures right now.
Now it's a dash back to Omarama, with only a final control point to negotiate.
Uli Schwenk behind, and Graham Parker's pretty close in there. They think they're more even-tempered. So these guys are now in the central Ben Ohau range. Notice how the scenery's changed. We're now in the big gravel pits of the Ben Ohau range.
Fluit, Karwa and Galleta are now locked in mortal combat. Each has a computer giving the ideal high-speed glide slope back to the finish line. The gamble is now beat the computer.
It's definitely Fluit and Giorgio 1-2.
It's going to be a good race home. The Discus 2s, which is what both Ben and Giorgio are flying, have a very slight edge.
Yeah, the shadows are on the ground. He's in second place in distance, but he's got the height on Ben at the moment, so
that's right.
Finishes, look at that. They're going for it, and that's Giorgio. He's the mountain rat from Italy. He knows how to work every rock.
So here you go. So when they come off the end of these hills, which they'll follow all the way to the end, they'll be going 250 kph to get here.
Ultimately, this race will be won or lost on instinct. Karwa starts to lose ground. Galleta and Fluit are locked, neck and neck.
They've wasted energy. Lake Pukaki in the background there. Twizel will be just out of sight to the right. You can see how bouncy the air is there. Giorgio's got the height as he heads towards Marama. Look at him bouncing. He's holding the hand and he's got both hands on the stick. It's rough out there and he's going fast.
Okay, so they're 10k out from the turn now, so they'll be back here within probably 5 minutes.
As the final control point approaches, Fluit gambles that the GPS system has a delay of 1 or 2 seconds, enough to get him legally through the turn. Galleta waits for computer confirmation of the turn point and loses 2 seconds.
And he thinks that's the only way he can stay in front of Sebastian. So they're neck and neck.
Fluit flying so fast and furious on the final glide that he can't use the radio for fear of biting his tongue.
So you might not see Ben.
You can see him on the camera.
But we can see them clearly with the naked eye now. They're getting down on the trees there. Okay, so they're all coming in directly, one after the other.
The two gliders streak for the finish line, Karwa drifting further behind in his LS8, which cannot match the two Discus on final glide.
And it looks like, amazingly, that...
So who's going to be in front there, Kirk?
I think Ben has done it. It's going to be close going through the line. It's Giorgio and Ben, very, very close. Giorgio is on the far side, Ben is on the close side. It looks like Ben has got line honours.
Oh, well done, Ben. Well done, Giorgio. What a race. What a race, ladies and gentlemen. And you've just witnessed history. This is the first time in history that a glider race has been followed live from the beginning to the end. So this is the first time on the planet it's ever happened.
Here comes Sebastian.
Sebastian's coming in low and fast now.
I was leading after the last turning point in the mountain. I saw Ben coming from the on the slope, on the ridge, and I tried, but it was impossible.
Came onto the Hunter Ridge and I saw all these guys in front of me, and I just flew absolutely as fast as I bloody well could.
Ben was going for the point, so I thought, no, I'll take the point. That was a pretty big mistake, so maybe you could say I've had my mistake for the competition.
I was full water.
Full water?
Full.
So, I'm happy now, because I couldn't.
Yes.
For me it was very frustrating to be in the lead for 5 kilometers ahead of the rest of the gang, and then being passed just kilometers before the finish line.
On the ridges was fantastic. Taking 1, 2 gliders, 3 gliders.
You came past me on the ridge and I thought, he's going to get me, because you had 300 feet at one point.
Yes, faster was the right thing to go on the ridge.
Did you see at the end the helicopter couldn't keep up with us?
Yes, I heard the noise.
Yes. Yeah. If I flew it the most aggressive I could, I still wouldn't be matching these guys.
Sebastian, everybody. But in the life you have always a surprise.
Yeah.
There is a blind chicken coming.
The
problem is that all these gliders are speed limited, and you're flying in extreme turbulence right up against the red line of the gliders, i.e. the speed that you're not allowed to exceed. And there's banging, crashing, there's stuff flying all around the cockpit, and you've got a guy sitting a couple of metres off your left wing, and you're trying to beat him, and he's trying to beat you, and you're sort of looking at each other, and you can see the stuff flying around in his cockpit. It's pretty exciting,
Standard European practice to put the glider on the deck that's 5 feet off the ground at 5 kilometres out at 140 knots and coming in under ground effect. 5 kilometres out here to the west behind me, there's nothing but briar bushes and riverbed. If it doesn't work out, you will most certainly destroy the glider, and there's a pretty good chance that you'll be taken away in a wooden box. So it's not my cup of tea. I'm not doing this. I can't push that hard.
This animation on HIC, we don't lose any sats.
Today's conditions are not so strong, and the race will not be easy.
Okay, they're circling before the start now. They need to gain height to get out to the start line. They're all working together, trying to suck every inch of height they can out of the weak thermals on Mount Horrible.
9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go.
The race is on. Travelling fairly slowly now, probably 60 or 70 knots. They're more or less in a gaggle, going back to Mount Horrible and around the first control.
We're manoeuvring on your right.
Now the weatherman said today that the thermals would be very weak, and this means the pilots are going to have to spend quite a lot of time climbing in the gentle thermals. And we've got our fingers crossed indeed that the day will hold out in these weak thermals and they'll be able to complete the task. Climbing slowly, just about 7 or 8 kilometres to the southwest of the airfield, and it looks like Terry De Ros is setting out on his own. Terry De Ros on the way to the Lindis Ridge, which is where he's hoping to get his next climb. Terry once again has lit out at the front of the bunch, and it looks like Karwa's following him. Yep, Karwa's right behind. The two of them have made a dash for the Lindis Ridge. Terry coming onto the Lindis Ridge now, just under the top of the ridge. Karwa's come quite close behind him. Karwa's had a better run than Terry to the Lindis Ridge. The rest of the gaggle are following. Yep, the rest of the gaggle are hot on their heels, all as one group. There's Uli Schwenk, and the rest of the group are arriving at the Lindis Ridge. The group is circling on the Lindis Ridge, slowly climbing to cross the ranges to the northwest and to the next turn point at the dingle. It looks like that Karwa and Galleta have set off for the dingle. Not sure where Terry De Ros is. Now they're crossing into the dingle, and notice the high cloud that's building up. That's not a good sign for them. The problem with the high cloud is that it cuts off the sun, and if there's any less sun than there is now, these guys are going to be in trouble because there's not going to be enough heat, not enough thermals. The group's spreading out as the conditions get difficult. Taking several different routes, the group now is in Timaru Creek trying to make into the dingle. Schwenk passing through the low saddle into the dingle with the turn point just behind, but he's not very high. He needs to get high on these ridges in order to maintain progress in this weak lip. Schwenk and Karwa are through the Dingleburn. They are heading onto the Hunter Ridge, and that's a fairly unusual choice. I think that the next turn point is further to the right of this photograph, and they would do better if they were on the ridge to the east of them. The high cloud is coming over. Conditions are not looking that good ahead of them. De Ros is heading for Wanaka, so he's out of the race. Karwa heading up the Hunter Ridge. He's struggling here a bit. I'm not sure what he hopes to achieve because the mountains at the head of this ridge are high and he needs to be right on top of the ridge, and there's not many places to land up there. You can see it's a big lake underneath him and then there's a very remote valley. They won't be getting any heat off the cold lake, so it's not a great place for them to be. Looks like Schwenk has turned around. Looks like Schwenk has realised that the Hunter Ridge is no good and is heading back towards the dingle. Giorgio Galleta, he's heading onto the Hunter Ridge. And look, Karwa has turned. Karwa has turned near the top of the lake. He's heading back towards the dingle. That's a good move, I'd say. He can come back to join Uli Schwenk at the Dingleburn strip. Karwa's on a reciprocal heading to Galleta. I hope they can see each other. This is getting pretty exciting. I don't believe it. Karwa's turning. Karwa's turning, going back up the Hunter Valley. He can't bear to let Galleta get ahead of him. We haven't seen Ben Fluitt's telemetry for a while. It's quite possible that Ben is following Galleta and Karwa. You can see how high the ridges are above them. There's no way that they're going to be able to saw their way over those ridges. And here's Uli sizing up the dingle strip. It's on the green field there by the little pond. Karwa is following Galleta up into the lion's den. I do hope they know where the airstrip is. It's way up that river valley beside the bush. It's just a couple of wheel marks on the side of the river. They're heading now for a almost certain land out on a very remote and difficult strip in the Hunter Valley. I have to say it's pretty exciting watching this live. Normally we are flying this in the gliders ourselves and we can only talk about it when we get back, but it's really exciting to see it happening live as the drama unfolds. So it does look like Karwa has spotted the airstrip. He's turned towards it, down by the trees on the edge of the river there. So he has the airstrip in sight. That's great news. That's a great relief. So Karwa's landed successfully. That's great. Looks like Galleta is going to be in next. Fluitt suddenly come up, and he is heading into the Hunter Valley strip as well. So Karwa's going to land there first, Galleta is going to land second, and here comes Ben Fluitt to land on the Hunter Valley strip as well. That'll be a record. There's never been 3 gliders landed on that strip before.
Another piece of gliding history, a mass land-out covered by the TV technology in the most remote and challenging locations. Tow planes were launched for the multiple retrieve even before the gliders had actually landed out at the Hunter and the Dingle strips. Prior to live coverage of the race, it would have taken many hours to find the gliders and know that everyone was down safely.
Pete Harvey landing on the Dingle strip, so there's another one down, a nice big safe place to land. And Uli just stopped at the end of the strip in front of him.
These locations are 10 hours return by road from Omarama. The TV coverage allowed almost instant aerotow retrieves during daylight hours.
Graham Parker heading into Dinglebun strip. Looks like a nice approach there. 950 yards long with about a gentle uphill gradient. It's as good an airstrip as you can get to land on around here. John Coots looks like he's got that one nailed. Oh, and here's Fluitt getting towed out of the Hunter Valley strip by the little cub. Yeah, Lemmy in the cub towing Ben Fluitt. John Coots landing on the dingle strip. Fine view of Harvey beneath the Cub and Ben Fluid as they head for home.
What's the heating onto the mountains? If we have
The next day, Task Director Gavin Wills showed little mercy for the Grand Prix
You all know
pilots.
it's a task setter's nightmare when all the pilots land out. That's a task setter's nightmare. I've never been involved in such a successful nightmare before. I like to challenge them. I'm a glider guide and I love these people to have great fun and have a challenge in this landscape. That's what's important to me. And I like to set them little puzzles, but at the same time I like them to come home and say, Gavin, I really enjoyed that. It was tough, but I really enjoyed that.
2 opportunities to get it wrong. It's just horrible. It's an evil task.
because you always need 3 possibilities. If one is not, I can't do, I must have a second, and better is to have a third.
If you haven't made a decision inside the last 30 seconds, then you're probably goofing off a bit. And if you haven't made a major decision in the last 5 minutes, then you seriously need to wake up a bit.
And we do need you to sign off that you have received and understood your instructions.
And back to animation.
Early. No, Galleta.
With only 2 days racing to go, Fluid leads, but needs to watch out for Galleta.
We've just been through the start line and looking up to turn point 1, which is on the shores of Lake Pukaki. So they've got about 25 k's to run. And they come back overhead Amarama, and that's the first double leg of their journey. Turn point 3 is, you can just see it in the head of the Hunter River and cross all those ridges. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 mountain ridges. Turn point 4 is at Glentana at the head of Lake Pukaki. They have some very rugged and snowy peaks to cross. Turn point 5 is in that long flat saddle, but it's only about 10 kilometres northwest of us. Turn point 6 is about 8 k's to the east of the airfield here. They will be finishing this time from the east, coming out of Totra Peak in the Benmore Range for a final dash into the finish line.
Today, conditions look strong.
3, 2, 1, go.
They're up and running, and somebody turning back there, he may have been across the line. They get a penalty if they're over the line too early, but they can rectify that penalty by coming back to the line. There's Sebastian Karwa, 3,600 feet. He's out in front. The other guys have turned back and are hooking into a climb. Uli's climbing through 3,900.
Sebastian's move not stopping there may have actually pushed him further ahead. It depends how much height they got out of that thermal and how strong the next thermal is that they eventually stop in.
Gliders, they have an LD, that's a glide ratio of about 1 in 43. So that's 3,000 feet above here. They can reach 43 kilometres before they have to land, so they go a long way.
That's John Coots climbing up on Benmore. It really just depends if Terry pulls into a good climb up the road, he'll gain that height back very quickly, and looks like Uli's pretty much stationary climbing there. Terry's running and losing height as he goes, and there's, as you see, 1,100 feet vertical distance from Uli Schwenk's height to Terry Delors' height.
So I think John Coots is circling there on the northern end of Mount Benmore. He'll be loaded up with water, so there's a fair bit of flex in the wings as he carries all that weight along. There's Terry gone through the turn, through the big beer can. Giorgio Galleta coming in also about the same height. One of the boys on the way back with Lake Pukaki behind. Now we've got the 2 front runners, but they're pretty low, going nearly neck and neck, back to the north end of Mount Benmore, crossing the canal by the Rotanifa Lake there. Giorgio's getting close to the ground to pick up the heat off the sides of Mount Benmore. It's Pete Harvey. He's done well, hasn't he, Kirk? He's back there. He's a little lower, but he's on the tops, and being on the tops is the place to be today. And you see De Ros have to stop back there. He's circling.
Galleta sticks to De Ros, a decision he regrets when De Ros gets low on the return leg to Omarama, chasing a bonus point for turn point 2.
Ben's at 5-4, quite a way back, but at a much better height. Here's Olivier De Ros is coming overhead the airfield now. He's under the minimum height, going through the turn and straight back to that thermal on Mount Horrible, where they hope that it's still running. Okay, is another major decision, isn't it? They're taking the turn and headed straight north. Olivier, on the other hand, headed straight for the hill.
You'll find that when they're thermaling a lot of gliders in a thermal like this, the pilot will often take the hat off just to give them that extra bit of vision.
Back at the Omarama turn point, the pack splits, with Galleta remaining at the back of the field in order to gain extra height, while Harvey heads out west.
They've taken a lot of different tracks, which is going to be very interesting for this long run out to turn point 3 and 4. It'll be interesting to see if they all meet
Coots,
up.
Fluid and Schwenk decide to head towards Lake Ohau to the northwest.
Yeah, they think that's Ben Fluid.
So he's taking the same line as Coots and Schwenk, which is actually very smart.
Here's a great view showing where the field is spread out. That's Coots and Co, Coots and Ben Fluid, and Uli Schwenk heading to the end of the Ben Ohau range. No, deep meters on the high country.
Look at the height that Pete Harvey's
Peter Harvey's gamble's paid off. He's now got 8, and he's going to run to the top turn. So that's the end gully. I know that gully so well. I've been back and forth in my glider so many times. I don't think they're in a very good position there. I would not like to be low on that end. So Harvey's got it on Coots and Uli Schwenk and Co.
Karwa's pretty much in a good position as well. He's only not too far behind Harvey.
Sebastian now 8k's back, and Pete Harvey 5k's back from the next turn. There's only 3k's between it, and they're kind of similar heights. Coots in the meantime are moving up the Ben Ohau range. I think they've dropped themselves into a bit of a puddle, wouldn't you say? And on the Ben Ohau range there, Harvey's climbing to get through that saddle. And you see where Coots and Co are. There they are at 7.5, quite close to Harvey and Sebastian Karwa actually.
Approaching turn point 3, Hunter's End, there are 4 mountain ranges to cross before the gliders reach the 4th turn point, Glentana, near Mount Cook.
Not as far behind as we thought they might have been.
That's amazing. Barrier range looks like the Maitland Valley there behind.
I mean, I don't care how bad a day they're having it. You know, things can be a lot worse than sitting in your cockpit and looking out your window at that.
The Englishman Pete Harvey has got a very handsome lead. Sebastian and Pete are still fairly close, but they're probably 20 minutes from being in here. And Coots and Schwenk have split up. Look at that. And I wonder which way Ben went. And they've got a big decision coming up to this turn, and this is why the nasty task setter set it. And they either have to make the turn and get back on the sunny side of the range, or come down directly home on track. I think for my money, if I could get around turn point 4 with enough height to get back on these mountains onto the Ben Ohau range, I'd come down the western sunny side of it, and I think that would be the fastest way to go. Where Uli Schwenk's gone, I don't know. I think he's gone onto the west. I think he is in the Landsborough, and I think he's lost. Pete Harvey and Sebastian Karwa are neck and neck, and they're still working up the range looking for a really good climb. Pete's got the slight edge, but they're virtually back together at this stage. Okay, here's Uli. He'll be looking at his map. I hope he hasn't flown off the edge of his map, Kirk. That would be disaster. He needs a map not to get to the turn point. He needs a map to find somewhere to land right now. So Uli's got himself into a bit of bother way back there. But up front, we've definitely got a horse race, and Sebastian Karwa and Pete Harvey now with the control points ahead of them that will bring them to the finish line. Okay, here's Uli, still struggling. He's climbed a little bit. You can see that he's under the ridge top on the wrong side of the mountain, so there's going to be a little private drama happening over there. Shot of Pete Harvey running along there, along the edge of the lake. You know, he's got no airstrips under him there where Uli Schwenk is. There's a field that I know of about 20 k's to the south of him, but I don't know if Uli knows where it is.
Galleta here actually looks like he's had a pretty good run from that turn point 3, because he wasn't too far ahead of De Ros and Coots when we looked at that graphic before. He was only a few k's ahead, and now he looks like he's got about a 10k jump.
There's an airstrip out at the Haas Township, but you've got to remember he doesn't know this country like you and I do, so he'll be looking at his map.
Galleta, as we can see now, pushing into the hills. Still at 8,000 feet, he's going to try and connect on the top of the Ben O'House and just run down there with a bit of speed. The time of the day when you think you're rounding the final turn, you think, oh, thank God I'm on final glide, and all I need is a few hundred feet, and you glide and glide and glide and get nothing, and then the taps come open and you're dumping water, and a really good day turns to a really bad day.
He's heading through the Haas Pass now. That's Mount Brewster, Haas Pass, right underneath them. He's 1,000 feet above the ground there, hoping to make Makarora as a land-out option. Contest Director Bob Henderson just rang me to say that they've got the camera ship helicopter on standby to go over and see what Uli Schwenk's up to, and they've got a tow plane standing by.
See here, Pete Harvey from the UK, he's climbing. This may be the last climb of the day. If this is a good climb, he may be able to just climb away in this and he'll be on final glide.
The airfield's just in sight now in the centre of the frame where the river gets wide. The Wilkin River coming in from the left. The airfield is 5 kilometres in front of him.
Okay, so we can see now Galleta. He's 15 k's behind.
Harvey and Karwa are suddenly being stalked by the Italian mountain rat. From a seemingly impossible position, using a strategy that he'd planned even before the race started.
He could take over these guys if they're scratching around in very weak lift.
Still 5 k's of the landing. He should have that on his map and his GPS.
The 3 of these guys are going to be very
Eventually, Galleta closes on them, heavy with water ballast, speed on his side.
They're going to be at the same height, so it's going to be a very good run home.
There's a field underneath him, but I don't know that he should land in that. There's a couple of fields ahead of him which are better. He should be pushing on.
He's definitely circling over something. He's not circling in lift, and that's typically what a glider pilot will do when he's about to make an outlanding. Literally nothing in it. There's 160 metres. Remember, these guys have just flown over 200 kilometres so far, and 160 metres and about 50 feet vertically of height separates them, which is absolutely nothing, and it's just unbelievable. It's slightly higher than the height they started at, so if you kind of train your eyes for that kind of direction and that kind of height, they're coming into the turn right now, so they've got about 3,500 feet above the airfield to do 25 kilometres, which should be ample.
Isn't it dramatic when you think that, 3 minutes ago they were neck and neck, and now he's pulled out 1.5 kilometres?
What that's telling me, Jim, is that Giorgio is still full of water.
He's not on the airstrip, so hello? Who's this?
Pretty much the track they're going to have to take.
Andy, it's Gavin Wills here in Amarama. I'm good. One of our contest gliders seems to have landed in the Makarora Valley, where we know he's landed.
The only one who will be dumping water will be Giorgio at this stage. So we've got Galleta now. Here we go. We can see him diving into lower and lower now. He's about 2 k's from the finish, if that. There you go, 2.7 k's. He's doing 230 kilometres an hour ground speed, so he's not extremely fast. Often these guys will come in with a tailwind like this up to close to 300 kilometres an hour. Here we go, dumping water, so that reinforces our theory that he kept his water, and that's how he managed to outrun Sebastian. And
look at this.
Here he comes.
And you'll see him along the runway, folks. Hard out, dumping water, a glider contrail. Giorgio
landing through the line
from Italy. What a spectacular race.
There you
what
go,
a
the winner
clever
of the
man.
day, Giorgio Galleta.
The mountain rat
from Italy
rips it off. Alpha Lima Bravo. What an effort. Still dumping water.
Sebastian, he's still got a reasonable ground speed as well, so he's going to quite easily get here. He's just crossing the threshold now.
Tell me about that. Correct, please.
Wait 2 minutes, please.
Pete the Englishman. Hotel 2. Well, get a load of that. Who said the British can't skite?
I can speak now.
So, tell us about it.
Incredible, because when I arrived here, a Mount Horrible, and I didn't climb, I say, okay, I am the last 0 point, and Lake Ohio was very, very important, because the ridge was working very good, so I made a 70-kilometer glide without climb anymore.
It was a sting in the tail, that last turn point, because it was over the hills, so we couldn't actually get back. We had to take the slow route through the back. It's interesting.
The best way to come back home was to make a turn point and jump over the hills to the western side. But we were too low, and I don't know really how Giorgio made it.
That's the second frustrating day for you in a row.
Not at all, because I like Giorgio.
Here in my heart, I was exciting, but I know he's a very, very good pilot, and he does nothing which is unsafe. Aber ich sag doch.
There's a drama. Oh my God! Everybody sees these stupid things. It's always an adventure to be in New Zealand. And this was really a big one. The first saddle was low, no problem to overfly. And I thought the rocks were exactly 90 degrees for the sunlight.
Yeah.
So it should work.
But no.
But no. And then I was like in a prison. And you could see the cold air mass coming in from the coast. And when I saw I'm under the line of this air mass, shit happens. Did you make your
The final day. Breakfast with the enemy. The mountains glowering outside the airfield hotel. At the briefing, Uli's saga features.
Riverbed, 28th of January, the Uli the Legend swim.
We were told the gliders, it's in a paddock, everything's fine. There's not much grass here. We thought we should now have the Uli Sphinx Trophy for outrageous outlandings, which is going to be presented annually by Glider Merriman, and you are the first person to sign it.
The task B for the day will be an exhibition race that we will organise pretty much the last minute to look after the crowd.
On the grid, it is 34 degrees, but conditions are stable, no good for Grand Prix racing. Eventually, the decision is made. The final race will be cancelled. On total points for the 7 days racing, Ben Fluitt has won.
I think the cream came to the top, and Ben was well-deserved winner. He knows these hills very, very well, and he's a brilliant pilot. So hat off to him, he's done well.
Of all the competitions that I could have wanted to win, this is the one I wanted to win. It's the world's best pilots, and to win it is just absolutely fantastic for me.
This sport is a great leveller, and you might be up on top of it one moment, but the next moment you're right down there with the pack, and that's what it does. So you've got to keep bouncing back. You've got to be resilient enough to take the knocks and still come back and have a good time and fly well the next day.
It's really good to see Meta here. She's been really good in that she's gone right through to the end of the competition, and that takes a lot of guts when you're flying in these mountains.
I think that I can talk for hours about how the mountains work and all the times I was just close to landing out but made it home anyway.
With this form of racing and the technology, it's now become a spectator sport.
And that has been awesome, both on camera and on tracking system, and we could talk to the camera and wave home and give emotional expressions.
Mr. Ben Fluitt, may we take this opportunity to present you with the inaugural Anaro Group Cup, and congratulations. I'll now ask Ian to present Ben with the biggest prize in gliding history, 10,000 New Zealand dollars from Anaro Investments to Ben Fluitt. Congratulations.
In a surprise twist, the Gladiators have conspired to play their part in another type of new race. This is it, a sprint race, pure speed, just for fun.
They'll go through the start line, cross the Chain Hills and the Ahuriri River, and into turn point 1. 10.2, which is right across those faces in front of us of Mount Benmore, out to Clearburn. Then they return, turn point 1 becomes turn point 3, and they'll be going fairly low at this stage and very fast. They'll be coming out of that beer can in the sky, pretty low. The finish line's straight out in front of the commentary desk here.
So Graham Parker didn't get the best start.
Now the technology has matured into a fully formed, cohesive unit. The pilots are even ready to interact with the commentators.
Thanks, Ben. De Ros just off his left wing.
He decided to go with Giorgio. Giorgio's found himself a thermal, so
I'm really banking on finding a thermal out on the front of Little Ben here somewhere and positioning myself a good lift closer to the turn points.
Yeah, he just said he was reluctant to talk on the radio and say that he's a few metres behind and just to below him, so because that'll make De Ros go even faster. I'd say he's becoming quite well set up to have a pretty fast finish around the final turn.
Anyone who was here yesterday will use this turn point. Yesterday, there we go, the first glider's turned the turn. Look at the rate of roll that they're putting on to turn that turn. It's more than a 90-degree turn they have to turn. It's probably about 110, 120 degrees. Giorgio's going into ground effect now. The other two will follow. You can
Look
see
at the
their
shadows on the ground on the big screen. They're right on the green. In order to get home, they've got to be right on the ground and ground effect.
Okay, so they're pulling up over some power lines, pushing forward again. They're going about 250, maybe 270 kilometres an hour. There's Ben dumping water. It looks like he might be out the front.
The second group of gladiators crossed their start line within minutes of the first race finishing.
4, 3, 2, 1, go.
And they're racing. If Terry goes out for it, I think John will probably follow, John Coots. And then kind of get in there. Look out the back behind Uli Schwenk.
On the big screen. Uli, have you got
There's a glider right behind them. That's how close they're flying. Look, here we go. We're turning the first turn now. A different path doesn't necessarily mean you drop behind.
There's a close-up on Uli Schwenk and 3 Yankee racing along the hill there under Totra Peak.
There's Sebastian Karwa. Okay, so there's Terry. He's looking a bit busier in his cockpit now. At the top of the hills is where the best lift's going to be today. Just the thermals slowly drifting up the sides of the hills and popping off at the top.
We'll see whether he can turn that height advantage into a distance and speed advantage shortly. That's a pretty cool shot.
So that's the view he's got back towards the final turn before home.
Uli Schwenk there going for it.
Sebastian Karwa, he still hasn't gone around that second turn yet.
It's still anybody's race, but Coots is out in front. It's going to be interesting to see what happens.
You can see Coots just out
Pete Harvey's view there.
Pete Harvey's glider. But have those guys just turned the turn? Did we see that?
Yep, round the turn, they're on the final run in. There's 2 of them below the helicopter going like crazy. I can see them with the naked eye now. There he goes, Terry Delore over the top. Yeah, out to the north. Terry's got his aeroplane upside down. He can't help himself.
Okay, so it looks like Coots has got maybe, 500 metre lead over Harvey there, Gavin?
Yeah, it looks like that. So he's...
Should be pretty comfortable at this stage. Certainly not going to be as tight as that last one.
The boys are coming in close and hard and fast. Coming on the finish line right on the deck. 250 kph.
The winner of this race, John Coots from New Zealand.
And number 2 in, Pete Harvey.
The second sprint race confirmed that this was a glimpse of another future. Short, fast and entertaining races which can complement the longer Grand Prix tasks.
Not sure if he's going to land straight in or do a fly past. Looks like he might do a fly past, Gavin.
Yeah, he's got a lot of energy on there, going pretty fast. Very smooth pilot. Look at he is right on the deck there.
Here he comes. Third equal in the competition overall as well.
Isn't that a beautiful machine? I'm very proud to be a part of this watershed moment in gliding history. We've been running around on the ground for 2 million years. We've been floating on the ocean for 10,000 years. We've been in the air for about 100. So flying is new, the sport of gliding is very new, and the human consciousness about flying is quite limited. People understand boat races, people understand races on the ground, but now with this technology we're able to bring them for the first time races in the sky. For those of us that have been racing for years in the sky, it's really exciting to be able to bring to our friends and family and others and say, look, this is what I do, and this is why it's so fantastic, and that's why I go flying every weekend, and that's why I'm so excited about the sport. And for the first time, this Grand Prix concept is bringing the sport into the homes of our friends and families and other human beings.
And the start line's open, they're off and racing. So Graham Parker didn't get the best start. He's the glider out the back there. He's a little bit lower. The other four are away.
And so who's got the edge on height there? I think Giorgio Galleta at 5'5".
Yeah, I think
they're all pretty much lining beside each other. Who's the dark green one? Who's the green? Peterson's out in front. She's going for it.
Peterson's definitely going for it. She wants to get some points on the board at some time this week, so now's her only chance. She's really putting the power on. Graham Parker still out the back, didn't get the best start, but it's a 50-kilometre task, so there's plenty of time to go.
Crossing the valley now towards turn point 1, which is underneath what do you call it? Tetra Peak, the big peak over there.
So I think we've got, if we look at those colours on the screen on the virtual eye animation, we've got Giorgio Galleta from Germany as the yellow line. The pink line next to him is, I believe, Ben Fluet. We've then got the light green line on the far left is Meta Pedersen. The blue line beside her is Olivier De Ros.
And there's a nice angle on Galleta. ALB, he's the yellow line. Let's remember that.
Okay,
we're getting some onboard pictures.
There's Ben Fluet.
Fluet's going, I'm grumpy. I've just won the overall contest and I'm grumpy. Is that his grumpy look?
I think that's a serious look, actually.
That's what he's looking ahead of him. You can see Tetra Peak out ahead of him there. We can see it from the ground down here. He's flying fast because he's got both hands on the stick. Thanks, Ben. So that cheered him up. He knew you guys were watching. Olivier De Ros, just off his left wing, is chasing him along. Oop, has he felt a bit of a bump, or is he going into a turn there?
Okay, so they're going through that first turn now. Looks like everybody's reasonably close together. And pushing on all around the 4.7, 4.8. Looks like Fluet's got 4.9, Parker 4.7, all in the turn, all pretty much running nicely. Bit of an easterly getting up, Gavin. Do you think that might affect the next heat?
It'll give them a tailwind for the run in, but remember it's only a carpet wind. The wind's only quite low. Here's the hillside going past them. They're now Olivier De Ros' view out the right wing. He's looking slightly anxious. And
look at the different tracks they're taking. It's a pretty small task, only 50 k's, but De Ros is taking quite a different track from the rest of them, and we'll see if that pays off. He's going to work the higher part of the ridge, perhaps. He's in a little bit of lift there, but Meta leading the way out the front. There's Meta now.
Yeah, Jim's just looking for them against the hill there. They should be visible. There's Meta looking around, see where the other guys are, whether they're catching or not.
Oh, Meta
there you go.
Yeah.
Ben gave us away. Direct communication with Ben Fluet in the sky. He's saying he's more focused. Say again. He's speechless.
Getting rather exciting. We've got Meta's out in front. She went for a pretty extreme line, and she's gone straight across the saddle here. And I've got Giorgio at the moment, but Meta's actually doing better than me at the moment. De Ros has fallen behind. He tracked around the side of the hill, but I've got to try and get in close on the hill here and try and pick up some of the height I've lost on Meta. So got to get pretty damn close to the hill here.
So we can see there it's Meta Pedersen. She's out in front.
There's a bit of a tactical split here. Giorgio's going to go right along the hill. I'm going to go out onto Little Den, just a peek out to the front. And Meta's decided to go with Giorgio. Giorgio's found himself a thermal, so I'm really banking on finding a thermal out on the front of Little Ben here somewhere and positioning myself in good lift closer to the turn points. There's very often a thermal on the top of this little point here, except I'm a bit lower than I really wanted to be.
So if you look, you can see them over there by Little Ben. Little Ben is the peak with the tower on it. And there are gliders, I just lost them, I saw them momentarily, just along the ridge between the peak with the tower on and the zigzag, just above the zigzag road in the saddle to the right of
Look how close Giorgio is
peak
to the
with
hill
tower.
there, Gavin, as he pulls in over the top there. You can see out the front of his cockpit,
Yep.
literally he's on the hill.
They're in the saddle between Little Ben and Big Ben, above the zigzag road to the north of us, skimming along the hilltops. There's Giorgio. He's the ridge rat, looking slightly anxious too. We noticed yesterday that he chewed his lip when the towing got tough. So there they are in the animation. They're running along that top of Little Ben Ridge.
And it looks like Fluid might have passed Pedersen, although Pedersen's gone a different route by the looks of that.
Graham Parker in there. He's a flatland pilot from Australia, so he's always a bit concerned when the fields come up to meet him, as they do in the mountains around here.
So we can see the two different routes that people have taken there. Giorgio's climbing in a thermal there, looks like on the top of the hill. Ben Fluid pushing on down the ridge, and out to the further to the northeast you've got Parker, De Ros, and I think Pedersen went out that way somewhere as well. There she is, 3,800 feet, so she's actually a little bit lower than the others. Yeah, Meta's 3k from the turn, Ben's 3k from the turn, so it's going to be close. Giorgio here is banking on getting a lot of height, I think, and then he's going to try and run out to the turn and run back on top of the hills. That was his tactic yesterday. He stayed on top of the hills and got a good run home, and I think he's hoping to do that today. Everybody else is planning on coming a bit lower by the looks of it. Giorgio climbed up that extra few hundred feet. It cost him that 3Ks on Ben, but he's got 400 feet on him, so that may turn out to be a good decision. We'll have to wait and see when they turn the turn point.
There's back on Ben now. Talk to us, Ben.
Okay, we're just coming up on the turn here. The way my flight computer works, I've got one of my computers down at the moment, and as soon as I get round this turn, I'm going to know what sort of a glide I've got back to the field, whether I've got enough altitude to go straight back, or whether I'm going to have to try and find some lift on the way. I'm probably going to throw a few turns here. Otherwise, I'm going to have to throw a whole lot of water over the basin here.
Okay, so basically a summary of what Ben's saying there is he's hoping for some good lift and a good run, otherwise he's going to have to dump his water out to try and climb up. There you go. There's Giorgio Galleta, he's dumping his water now. So that's an interesting tactic at this stage of the race. It's essentially a ridge run, but obviously they're going to need some thermals to get home, so it's going to get pretty exciting. This is the second heat taking off now, so they'll be starting in about 10 minutes.
It's going to be a little tight here.
Okay, so we might get some reasonable camera shots, hopefully, of Ben. Here we go. What he's saying is he's approaching a saddle, but he's losing quite a bit of height, and it might get a little bit tight of whether he can make it over the saddle or not.
Any moment now he's going to pull up and you'll start seeing how close we are here.
Okay, Ben's been talking about the glide angle and the amount of water that he has to drop if he has to, and the McCready ring setting he needs to set up for his computer to help him to judge the ride home. If you look out over to the right a little, Ben, now you can see a glider dropping water. And that's Terry Delore in Golf Papa going up for the next heat.
Okay, so you can see this glider coming. There's actually a glider further ahead on the hill, but this glider here, dumping water, is going absolutely ballistic, and there's no way, Gavin, I wouldn't have thought that he's going to get round that turn point and back to the airfield. I think he's going to be landing out. Yeah, this glider that's returning here is not going to have enough height to finish the race. he has made a tactical error, and we'll just try and work out who that is.
Okay, and I just heard from Ben Fluid on his frequency. He's finding lift along the side of the hill where he is now. You can see that on the big screen, and he's increasing his McCready ring. This means he's going to fly faster and faster. So he's definitely, I'd say he's becoming quite well set up to have a pretty fast finish around the final turn.
Okay, so it's Graham Parker has returned to the airfield. He didn't have enough height coming through the saddle there to complete the turn. He's run back to the airfield at high speed, so his race is over. There's Fluid. Fluid's
And
looking
Ben
at
just said on the...
Meters below me and just in front of me, so I just need to try and catch him.
Yeah, he just said he was reluctant to talk on the radio and say that he's a few meters behind and just below him, so because that'll make De Ros go even faster. At any rate, he gave the
The side of this hill here, so that means we're going to fly straight at the side of the hill and pull up as we go across it and dive over the back of it.
So what they're about to do is dive through the saddle. Yeah,
they're out to the right there, Kirk.
Yep.
Going right under the peak of Mount Benmore, the high peak. There's three of them. There's three of them, one behind the other. Under the high peak of Mount Benmore.
So the height they've got there, Gavin, that they're pretty well placed.
Glide to 7 McCready glide, which means we're going to be pushing the speed up pretty fast here.
Basically what we'll find is by the time they turn the turn, they'll be doing 250 kph, I'd expect, on the way in.
Oliver, if you switch to the camera that points off my left wing, I'm going to be coming right up alongside Oliver, so you'll be able to see on that camera how we're doing.
Gee, he's not only directing the race, he's directing the camera crew as well.
Below me, looking up at me.
Yeah, I guess Ben can't help himself.
Okay, so there's Olivier De Ros. He's looking out to his right wing.
He's keeping an eye on Ben. That's exactly what he's doing. Looking out over there. They're the three gliders neck and neck now.
At the turn point, which was just a couple of knots.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so we're going to lose Ben's running commentary now because we've got the second group of gliders going up in the air, and that's the channel that they'll be on to start. So we've got plenty of visual here to tell you what's going on. You can see there 2 Alpha, that's Ben. Echo Tango, that's Olivier De Ros, he's just behind him. And ahead of the two of them is Giorgio Galleta. So it's going to be a fantastic race. They're approaching the final turn now. They're doing 180 kph. And they're about 1,300 feet above the airfield with 10.4 Ks to run. So it will be a very fast and exciting run home. You can see them if you look out just towards the east. They're about to turn the turn any second. Anyone who was here yesterday, we used this turn point yesterday. There we go. The first gliders turned the turn. Look at the rate of roll that they're putting on to turn that turn. It's more than a 90-degree turn they have to turn. It's probably about 110, 120 degrees. And there they go. Looks like Giorgio's well out the front. It's going to be a pretty exciting glide because Ben doesn't like being beaten. So he's going to push that glider to its limit. And there you go. They're spreading out and they're pretty much looking...
As he goes over those hills there to the right, Giorgio is out of my vision at the moment. You might be able to see him on the camera looking back over my head. This is really going to come down to the wire here.
Okay, and around the last turn, they are neck and neck. He just said there's going to be a downwind landing through the line, so they're really pushing it to the edge.
Yeah, so remember the finish line is that third hangar. Pretty much the hangar that some of you are sheltering under. They're probably about 3 Ks out. You can see Ben looking out on the looking out his left wing, looking at those other gliders. Only 2 gliders from the heat go through to the final if we run a final. So there's 40 meters between the 3 of them, and one of these guys is going to miss out.
Yeah, Ben's going flat out.
Giorgio's nose is literally 2 meters behind
You can see them coming over the top of the small hills now.
If you can see a house at the bottom of the low hills.
Okay, so there's 9 metres, 7 metres separating the three of them, 6 metres. So there is literally nothing between them. They're just going to keep pushing and pushing and pushing until they can't push any further. They'll be on the ground. Here we go. Giorgio's going into ground effect now. The other two will follow. You can
Look
see
at the
their
shadows on the ground on the big screen. They're right on the green. In order to get home, they've got to be right on the ground in ground effect.
Okay, so they're pulling up over some power lines, pushing forward again. They're going about 250, maybe 270 kilometres an hour. There's Ben dumping water. It looks like he might be out the front. He's got his wheel down. So they're doing a couple hundred, probably slowed now to about 180 kilometres an hour. He's got Giorgio's coming through. Giorgio's slowed up to fly through. And so that slowed him down a bit. Ben takes the line honours with Giorgio second and Olivier De Ros from France in third.
Well, that was pretty exciting.
At the speed Ben's going through there, he wants to hope he's got a good wheel brake. And you probably feel the water getting rained on now from the gliders that went over the top.
Boy, we waited for that shower, haven't we, Jim? We waited for that shower.
Ben out there just getting out of the cockpit looking quite pleased with himself.
That seriously was a drag race, wasn't it, folks? Who would have thought you'd see that with gliders? That was hot racing. Even the guys up here, the press, the camera guys are very excited about it. That was a tremendous bit of racing.
Okay.
6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go.
And they're racing.
So they're through the line there. Delors in front, but then he cheated slightly, didn't he? And they're on their way.
So this will be an interesting race, Gavin. I mean, I'm not quite sure on the tactics. These guys all would normally fly with quite different tactics, but I think we'll see a bit of brink gliding from Terry in particular. I think if Terry goes out for it, I think John will probably follow, John Coots, and then we'll have to see what the others do. At the moment, all just flying wingtip to wingtip.
Yep, going wingtip to wingtip pretty much at the moment. It's the leg from the first to the second turn. It seems to be the critical one, whether there's a bit of lift there or not, and the day has continued to heat, so this might be a slightly faster heat than the previous one, but we'll see.
So in this heat, remember, we have got John Coots, Sebastian Karwa, Terry Delors, Pete Harvey and Uli Schwenk. We're looking at Uli Schwenk on the big screen now. And that's looking out Uli's wingtip. So they're all pretty much an identical height, 5,900 feet, all very close together. And this is going to be a race. So here we go, they're approaching the first turn point, looking at Pete Harvey there. Doesn't have his orange glasses on today, he must have his Ridge Racing glasses on. Maybe he saw Giorgio wearing his and wanted to kind of get in there. Look out the back behind Uli Schwenk.
On the big screen. Uli, have you
and
got
there's a glider right behind him. That's how close they're flying. Look right beside Uli's ear, you can see another glider, and one on either side of him. So I mean, that's how close these guys are flying.
Brother Racing.
John Coots from the big screen, do you read?
And if we all line up like ducks, we'll get a free ride off the one in front.
Yeah, it looks pretty good. You guys are live on the big screen. Hello, Uli, we can see you. This is Gavin. I think he's too serious. Turned his radio off.
Yeah, I mean, at the moment, these gliders just taking exactly the same track, formating right on each other. It looks pretty calm there in Uli's cockpit, but here we go. We're turning the first turn now, hooking a left-hand turn, and now's where things, you can see them if you look up above the first turn. You can see all 5 gliders glinting in the sun, and they're heading along the top of the ridge. So Now's where the tactics may come into play. Someone may break right. Who knows? Remember, Ben said Olivier De Ros. He said, Olivier De Ros he's dropped behind. He's taken a different route, but he was one of those three in that tight glide for the finish. So a different path doesn't necessarily mean you drop behind.
There's a close-up on Uli Schwenk and 3 Yankee racing along the hill there under Totra Peak. Yeah, that was the glider that was in the riverbed yesterday, completely unscathed. He made a perfect landing, a little four-wheel drive, and that's the view from John Coots. Look how relaxed he is. 2 fingers on the stick and just cruising along.
Okay, here we go. De Ros putting on a bit of speed now, starting to make a break. Coots following him. There's Sebastian Karwa, looking quite relaxed. So about now is when they're thinking, right, how am I going to get away from these guys? You can see there, they're still flying just serenely along in formation. Nobody's pushed out anywhere yet or taken a different route. They may be just thinking, everybody's waiting for someone else to take the risk, to make the decision. And if nobody does until after the first turn, it'll be a very tight race home. You can see Coots looking around. He's waiting for someone just to make a move. All around the same height, flying at the same speed. 15 k's out, maybe 20 k's out from that turn point. 10 k's out, okay. So they're not far from turning the turn to home. Okay, so there's Terry. He's looking a bit busier in his cockpit now. It looks like they might be picking up a bit of speed. He's getting nervous. Who's chasing him? Sebastian, still looking a bit pretty casual, but putting on a bit of speed. I think they might be now starting to go for it. See him quite low there over the hill. Looks like they've gone through the saddle, or certainly over the top of the ridge.
Kirk, these guys would be enjoying this, wouldn't they? I mean, you're not mucking around with thermals, are you? Just straight into it. This is drag racing.
Oh, they'll be loving it, Jim. You can see a few cumulus there to the north. Pete Harvey chucking in a little bit of a turn there. Interesting. Quite a tight turn, actually. So there must be a little bit of lift. There's another pilot following him, and maybe they're all stopping to top up here before heading out to the turn, just making the most of the ridge lift or the thermal lift coming off the top of the hills. Because remember, the top of the hills is where the best lift's going to be today, just the thermal slowly drifting up the sides of the hills and popping off at the top. The further down the hill, the harder it is to get the lift. So that's Uli Schwenk climbing there. Okay, so now here's where the tactics have kicked in. Karwa's gone right, Harvey's gone, he's heading towards De Ros, Coots is there with De Ros, and Uli Schwenk's in the middle where Sebastian is heading into now. Coots still running on track, running the spur. So we've got 2 Ks separating the two of them, but it all really depends on who finds that thermal first. Would be pretty risky to push out to the glide from here. You can see Terry De Ros in the middle of the screen under the numbers trying to get a little bit of a climb.
Pete Harvey's still looking serious. Looks like an Arab sheik there, but Sebastian Karwa, cool as a cucumber. So Karwa's 3.6 kilometres back behind Coots, but he's a bit higher. He's got 350 feet on him, almost 350 feet higher. So we'll see whether he can turn that height advantage into a distance and speed advantage shortly. It's the gamble. It's all about energy management in these gliders. If you've got energy if you're fast, you've got energy if you're high, you've got energy when you're in lift, and it's all about energy management.
Well, he's certainly pulling out a bit of a lead on the guys behind. Terry De Ros is starting to follow him. Looking a little bit nervous maybe, Gavin. What do you think?
I think he's wishing he was back in Argentina.
I notice he doesn't have his special thermal spotting glasses on. So Pete Harvey's gone in there with Coots, and De Ros not too far behind, so could be interesting. De Ros actually is slightly higher than Coots, but
Oh, we'll have to see.
Harvey's the highest though. Schwenk's coming across at 4.5, so
That's right. We're all
he's
going
got the
in
height
now.
advantage.
Who was missing from there, Gavin? I didn't pick up the fifth glider that was missing. It could have been Sebastian Karwa. I'm not sure where he is. There's Terry giving us a wave.
Yep, that's a pretty cool shot. Whoops, he let go the stick. Did you see that?
Let go of the stick to put his glasses on, I think.
Yeah. That's Pete, looks like going through the turn there.
Yeah, he's turning hard left. See how they have a very good look when they turn. They know there's a lot of other gliders around. It's very important to make sure you look everywhere because they're not necessarily where you think they are. That's looking out the front of Pete's glider. So that's the view he's got back towards the final turn before home. Still a few hills to cross before he can get here. There's Uli, still looking like a cardboard cutout. Cool as a cucumber.
Yeah, Uli's not going near Makarora today. That's
no, the landing opportunities are a bit better today, I think. So Karwa's still climbing. I have to say, Gavin, I think that's probably his race over.
Yep, 4.7's not going to be enough to really... He's above the saddle there, though, isn't he?
He is, but it depends if these guys... What height do you need to get back through the saddle? Is Coots going to make it? Coots and Pete Harvey at 4,000?
I think in the last race, Ben came round a little underneath the Little Bend Tower there, and that was quite good lift, so probably the best way to go. A lovely view of Lake Pukaki behind.
Look at those cumulus there.
I'm not looking at the cumulus clouds. We love cumulus clouds.
So there we go. So that hard to tell who those two gliders are. Here we go. We might get a better look. It is Terry De Ros, and that was probably the Pete Harvey or John Coots, just above him. Either way, I think we're going to have a race for the line.
So what's that view there? Is that Little Ben coming up? We're looking out to Clearburn there, the Cloud Hills off his right wing. The main road north to Twizel, just somewhere to the right of him. Here's the...
Here we go. So they're
all going around
to run the tops.
Yeah. Karwa is still climbing.
Well, Coots has put on a bit of speed over Harvey. It looks like De Ros is back there with Schwenk. We were looking at De Ros and Schwenk, so the helicopter's not actually on the lead glider. So it'll be interesting to see if Pete Harvey can catch Coots.
And that's Uli Schwenk. Uli Schwenk there going for it.
So that's Schwenk with De Ros. De Ros near him somewhere. Karwa looked to be sitting on the hill.
Look how close to the hill they are there. See the shadow dancing along underneath him?
Big pull up there and a bit of lift.
These guys are doing 150 to 180 kph along the side of the hill there, trying to pick up any of the sun's energy that might be wafting up the side of those brown tussocky faces. Okay, so they're crossed back, and we should be able to see them over there now, shouldn't we?
Yeah, so Sebastian Karwa, he still hasn't gone round that second turn yet. So that's his race over. There's Terry De Ros. He's racing along at low level. You can see the tussock passing under his wing. He'll be thinking, I've got to catch that Coots. So there's Uli Schwenk from Germany. He's out there somewhere near Terry De Ros. And shortly we should be able to see them coming round the hills. Okay, so
they're around the hill there, aren't they?
I think they're coming round the face, do you think?
Oh, they're up there, so they've got to be close to that.
Okay, so Coots and Harvey. So Coots has got a 200-metre lead on Pete Harvey, which isn't a lot.
Okay, we've got gliders there now. We can see them across the other side. You can see the helicopter. They've got three gliders, about a half a K to a K in front of the helicopter. I see them pulling up there and going for it. There's Pete Harvey having a drink.
Yeah, the helicopter can't keep up with them at the speed they're going. Probably he'd be struggling. See, Coots is doing 212 kilometres an hour. Pete Harvey struggling to keep with them. Be hard to catch Coots from here.
Okay, they're running in for the last K into last K and a half into the final turn, and we can see them against the hillside there under Totra Peak. approaching the last turn point, and it's still anybody's race, but Coots is out in front. It's going to be interesting to see what happens.
You can see Coots just down
Pete
the
Harvey's
left
view
of
there
Pete
of
Harvey's glider. Yeah, it's pretty the height's pretty marginal. Pete may have 50 feet on John, something like that, but we'll have to see as we go into the turn.
So there they are approaching the final turn.
And it looks like De Ros
has
possibly
done
coming
it again. He had those big glasses on and he couldn't find the way.
Well, he's still got the height though, Gavin. I think he might just be coming in for a bit of crowd pleasing, perhaps.
He could be.
Yeah, it looks like he's about 3 k's short of us. But have those guys just turned the turn? Did we see that?
Yep, round the turn, they're on the final run in, and there's 2 of them below the helicopter going like crazy. I can see them with the naked eye now. Looking down to the east of the runway there, they are to the left of the house. If you see the white windsock in the far corner, they're just to the right, above the low hills, to the right of the white windsock. And they'll come through that low point in the chain hills just to the south of us. They're doing 250 kilometres an hour or so.
And we've also got Terry Delore doing a few aerobatics out to the north of the airfield there.
Yeah, out to the north. Terry's got his aeroplane upside down. He can't help himself. There he goes. Terry Delore over the top.
Okay, so it looks like Coots has got maybe, 500 metre lead over Harvey there, Gavin?
Yeah, it looks like that. So he's...
Should be pretty comfortable at this stage. Certainly not going to be as tight as that last one. Terry's still entertaining the crowd. There, we're looking at Coots on the big screen. There's Terry. Looks like he's going to do a loop. And coming over the finish line, we've actually got a bit more of a race now. Looks like Pete's caught up, John, a little bit. It's going to be quite close coming for the line.
Deck, on the deck down there in the east now.
Both on the deck.
And
Terry's still going.
And the boys are coming in close and hard and fast. Coming onto the finish line right on the deck, 250 kph. And Terry Delore doing aerobatics over the top of them just for the hell of it.
So that's Pete Harvey there. He's actually just cracked his brakes by the look of his left hand, Pete Harvey, just to make sure he stops before the line. Coots must have line honours, I would say. It looks like Coots
wheels down, they're landing straight ahead.
Down, and they're landing straight through. So the winner of this race, John Coots from New Zealand.
And number 2 in, Pete Harvey. He's got to get across the line, though. Yep.